Which from the Trail and Greater RCMP. And Mike will be giving, I believe, a presentation and an overview, and then we will open the mic up to council for any questions or comments that they may have of Mike. So with that, Mike, it's all yours.
Okay, I think we're ready here. So I'll just give a quick update on the Trail RCMP detachment. So far, everything this year is going as well as it can. We're still experiencing a fairly severe resource crunch. We have, out of 22 police officers, we have 7 off with for various medical reasons. And then we have 2 on what we call restricted duties, which they perform limited duties and hours as they work their way back to full time. We do have a new officer transferring in, Constable Fowler from Masset in early November. And we expect one of our newest recruits, Constable Ben Ansom, to join us full duties in a few months from now. So there is some improvements, and we do expect some people to come back to work shortly after some medical leaves. As far as the detachment goes, we're getting a new HVAC system this year. It's either freezing cold or super hot at the detachment just due to the age of the system, but we're looking forward to the brand new system that the City of Trail has so generously provided. As well, within the detachment, we had an officer apply for a fitness grant, and we have a brand new gym, so that'll be available to officers to keep healthy and fit 24 hours a day. As far as policing operation goes, I'm going to talk about the changes in stats rather than the ones that are staying fairly steady or within our normal ranges. Theft and break-in enters and theft of motor vehicles are, the theft of motor vehicles and auto theft are on the rise. Now, I don't think they're beyond numbers that we have seen historically with theft from motor vehicles. That's why we run media releases every week asking for people to lock their vehicles, secure their items, and secure their properties, as well as now check their security systems. We did have 2 businesses in town that were recent victims of break-and-enters, and it was more of a technical glitch about why their alarms hadn't notified them. Otherwise, the police may have been on the scene, be able to apprehend the suspects before they got away with the goods. Now, one of the businesses did receive most of its items back, either through fortune or through providing a reward. So there was a bit of a silver lining in that, and we go over those procedures with the business or facilities after they've maybe experienced a technical glitch or a lapse about how to make sure that their alarms are being notifying the police. Theft from vehicle will continue to be a problem here until people lock their vehicles up and put their things away. We're still having unlocked vehicles with the keys in them, with all their personal effects left on the street overnight, and it provides ample targets for people who like to steal from them. Auto theft is on the rise. We have a person in town that steals cars. They are only stealing cars with keys. Modern cars are very, very tough to steal. There is a rumor going out there that they're using advanced electronics to tap into the frequency of the car, but that is not the case. These are usually pretty low sophisticated people who are just looking for keys, sometimes stealing them out of houses that are in easily discoverable locations, and sometimes taking them right out of the car. So we're encouraging people not to store their keys anywhere near the vehicles or to hide them, especially around the downtown core area, East Trail and West Trail, and Glen Mary. These are easily walkable locations and provide a fairly target-rich environment for people looking to steal. And interesting statistics, or 3 of them, when you look at them together, our mental health related calls continues to be our heaviest workload. even though 78 calls might not seem like our highest number, it can take an exceedingly amount of our time to deal with each mental health call, especially if it includes getting someone to the hospital to be admitted for psychiatric care. Now, the hospital has done some great structural improvements where they have a secure room and it doesn't tie up our officers for as long, but they are fairly time intensive every time we deal with them. And sometimes we can have multiple calls a day depending on the time of month and other factors. In addition to the mental health related calls, we also are increasingly being called to check the well-being of people, whether it's through mental health or physical, or the fact they're elderly and no one's heard from them for a while. So that was 93 calls. That's almost 100 attendances to house just to check on people's well-being. Often it's left to the police for two reasons. One, sometimes people are worried about a safety risk. So our other partnering agencies don't quite have the same authorities or training as us. So sometimes they need us to go with them in case there's, a perceived threat of harm to them. Or sometimes we need to breach a door, and the police are the only ones that have the authority to breach doors in those types of situations. And sometimes we do it physically, and sometimes we do it through a locksmith. Suspicious occurrences in vehicles, 265, that is a lot of people calling in reporting. So it's good because when people call in and report, police get called to the scenes where they need to be in case something's going on to check it out. So a lot of those suspicious calls have resulted in enforcement action, whether it be impairs or arresting people for theft or other things. And unspecified assists don't fit neatly into any category, but we do get because we're kind of the catch-all emergency service, we do get a lot of requests. When they can't think of who else to call, they give us a call. So, when we're talking between mental health related calls, check well-beings, suspicious person, vehicle occurrences, and unspecified assistance, we're talking nearly 500 incidents in a quarter. So that's quite a few. Overall, I think our crime rate is fairly steady. It has risen a bit since the, I do see a correlation with less available social assistance to the increase in theft, just because I do think that was helpful in the sense of lowering crime, because instead of someone having to go and steal for money, that they had some support provided to them, and it negated that need. But now that we see that shifting, we're going to see a rise in theft, and I'm encouraging everybody in the public to be prepared and protect their items and houses and vehicles. I can open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Eleanor.
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to add, how is the foot patrols in the downtown core going, and how often are they going down there?
So we were conducting a number of foot patrols through the first few months. But due to our resource shortages, those officers weren't available. So myself, we have a community liaison officer. It's an official position, Constable Sherry Karn, trail bylaws, and Fire Chief Dan Derby, as well as victim services and a few people from the medical community conducting weekly foot patrols downtown. Now, we visited the back alley behind CDS, underneath the bridge, and a number of other locations of concern weekly, and then provided reports to anybody that was interested or had a stake in those areas, just to keep everybody updated. And what was nice, if you took a picture of a pile of garbage or noticed fires were being lit, or somebody was hanging out or sleeping in the area they shouldn't be, you had a group you could email, and that problem would be fairly resolved. Now, with the homeless population downtown, it's a continuous effort in order to maintain order and reduce the amount of calls, but it's honestly here to stay. It's not any one agency's responsibility, but it's going to be a persistent problem, and it's a problem in every community. But the foot patrols provide a very good measure of what's going on and where the problems are and how things look out there. So we're going to keep them up until, we can't do them anymore, which, we'll try to get right through the winter and into next year. But, I enjoy getting out of the office and going for a walk anyway. So as our resources increase, I'm hoping to get other officers involved as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Colleen.
Thank you, Councillor Santori. Mike, I was just wondering if that camp is still behind CDS, the Royal Theatre in the back alley there. I know that's a concern of the library as well, is that those tents were set up there. There was about 4 or 5 tents and people living in there. And I know last time we brought this up with Sheila, she said they were quarantined there because of COVID. So I'm just wondering if the camp is still set up there. And, there was a few ideas to help relieve that camp as for safety wise. So I guess if the camp isn't there, I don't need to talk about it, but I'm will, I definitely can. You know what, I'm just going to put it out there because it is a fairly big issue back there. Somebody suggested that we take the bridge off the library so that vehicles can get right through the alley. So the fire department and the police, and there can be regular patrols through there so that people aren't camping there. It is a huge issue. My understanding, especially for the ambulance and the fire department, if they need to get into that alley to do any services, it's blocked because of the garbage bins and the library bridge. And I'm almost wondering if it would be a good idea if we could take that bridge down. I mean, that would be up to the city, I'm sure, but take it down for the winter and just see if we can get a flow of traffic through there. See if there's going to be a difference or would be a difference.
Chair Santori, can I just address one part of Colleen's question, because I actually had a walk through there with Sheila Adcock today. So the tenters from that were in the back behind CDS were there because of quarantine needs, and as of the last few days ago, they are now gone. There were cars back parked there. There was an issue with them starting a very small fire that she had indicated to them no fires, and they caught them, and as a result they said your privileges to tent back here are gone. So when I went there today, the alley was clean. There was no campers or homeless vulnerable people in the alley. Behind Trail Association of Community Living behind the library. And she didn't indicate that privileges were going to be provided to go back tenting there in the near future.
So they are going to be continue to be allowed to tent back there?
No, I said privileges were not. She did not say that there was privileges was going to be granted to tent there in the future. They have been told that they cannot tent in the carport. There was cars in the carport.
Okay. Carol, you had your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Santori. Sergeant Wazintowicz, these last 2 incidents, the one with the knife that was involved with the 2 RCMP officers, and then the incident in Glenmary where the father and son were maced and then the son was hit over the head. I see those 2 incidents as quite an escalation as to what's normally happening. I just want you to comment on that. I was very concerned with both of those incidents.
I'll start with the officer who he was stabbed in the hand during a high-risk arrest scenario, and we have a gentleman in town that's well known to us. Been well known to me since I began here in 2008. Over time, with illicit drug use and other things, his behavior has escalated out of control. And there's a number of factors that I won't go into, but he was considered very high risk to deal with. On the night in question, the officer, had a confrontation with him, and fortunately for this person. He was apprehended, relatively with the lowest level of force I think we could have used. And it's actually not even the appropriate level of force. It's a much higher level of force when someone comes at you with a couple of knives. During the struggle, though, the one officer was stabbed in the hand, but managed to successfully still arrest this gentleman. The issue we have is that this gentleman had other similar violent offenses outstanding and was released by the courts. We were very surprised on the previous incident where he had attacked somebody in his family with a crowbar, but yet was still released on very low bail. And that's something that we're trying to address with our court system. The issue within Canada is that there's a presumption of innocence. So if you have not been convicted, the onus is on the courts to release. And unfortunately, in some cases, release, in my opinion, in this case, was inappropriate, which resulted in this next incident with the officer. Now, I believe the way things are going now, this gentleman will remain in custody until his trial, which is appropriate. But we're having a very hard time keeping anyone in custody for anything. So I know it does upset the public, but we used to be able to hold people in custody, especially even if they committed a serious crime and then went out and breached their conditions of release. Usually after 1 or 2, they'd be held in custody until their trial. But now it's very, very difficult to keep anybody in custody. And there's good reasons for it. The court system's not, not stupid. I think part of the reason why is they are trying to protect people's charter of rights. And there has been cases in the past where someone allegedly committed a crime. Those original charges are dropped, but now they're facing a bunch of breach charges and end up spending in time for jail for breaching conditions for a crime they never committed. So the court's trying to correct that. I think we've struck the right balance? I don't think so. And these things tend to ebb and flow, but I'm hoping we get back to the point where violent offenders, after committing at least 1 act or 2 acts of violence, that they stay in custody. But it is not the way things are going right now.
So Mike, I just want to ask you, do the police, we've heard of other weapons that street people and people that we consider at risk in the community or at risk of violence in the community, packing knives. Of course, now we hear about the spray. We've had one that had a javelin. We had one that had a sword. Do the police have the right to stop anybody on the street that they think could be carrying a weapon and search them?
No.
There have to be a reason?
There has to be reasonable grounds. And what that comes down to is us being able to see the weapon or have information that someone's carrying a weapon and properly identifying that person, stopping them and arresting them and performing a search. Search incidental to arrest provides us with the powers to search a person in their backpacks and other items. Detainment can, provide an officer opportunity to search for his own safety or safety of others, but that's, less utilized just because it's not as strong as powers arresting or searching after an arrest. So with bear spray is a very potent weapon. It's used regularly downtown. We don't always report on it. A lot of it, honestly, is used between people living on the street, attacking each other with it. It's very easy to purchase, and it's a very effective weapon. Unfortunately, over the last weekend, there was an incident between somebody we believe stealing from a vehicle, who pepper sprayed the owner of the vehicle. And that person's been arrested and placed on conditions, as well as a number of charges coming forward. Again, unfortunately, we could not hold that person in custody. That would have been my preference, but that didn't happen. So that person will be facing charges in court, and the full story will come out. But the reason we put that out into the public is to just ask them not to chase down people. As good as it would feel, And we know that, everybody has a fantasy of that working out in their favor. Often those people can get hurt. And the difference is we think like regular human beings, we're going to run somebody down and tackle them and hold them for the police, or maybe fight with them and give them a punch or two. When you're stealing from cars, or you're living on the street, and you used to living a violent lifestyle, usually you possess weapons. So just think about that. Before you go chasing someone, they could have bear spray, they could have a knife, they could have a bat, they could have friends, and they don't fight fair. So we're recommending call the police, maintain a safe distance for observation, and we'll come and handle it. And, even our officers get hurt time for time, but that's why we're here, is to protect the public from getting hurt.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I just like to make a comment. Like we hear, and don't take this the wrong way, it's nothing to do with the RCMP, but I think our justice system is totally dysfunctional and not in line with what's happening, with the reality of what's happening in our communities. We talk about their civil rights, but it's starting to seem, or it is, that our civil rights as law-abiding citizens are not taken into account. People were frustrated before. I'm not sure what kind of dialogue you've had with friends of yours or other citizens in this community. They are starting to get angry. And that's why you're starting to see some people taking the law in their own hands. And I don't see that decreasing, Mike. If they need, people will be taking bats to some of these people if they break into their property, because they're getting totally discouraged when they see the courts releasing these people out just to commit another crime again. So as a law-abiding citizen, I feel my civil rights are totally being violated by these people. We can use mental illness and addiction and all of those things as reasons as to why, but when violence kicks in, I think it's bringing people's frustration and anger to a whole new level in our community.
I understand people's desire for that type of vengeance and vigilantism, but vigilantism is still a crime. And if you assault someone using unreasonable force, you can still be charged. And it's a bitter pill to swallow if you're the victim of a crime and also now you're being charged with assault. And it does happen. It also goes too far and goes overboard, and regular people trying to exact their own sense of justice can end up in a lot of trouble. And you might not like hearing that, but it's just the truth. I've been doing this for 20 some years, and seen some very good civic-minded people try something like that and end up in jail. And it's sad. And I can introduce you to a gentleman in Vernon who had post-traumatic stress. He tried to stop a shoplifter. He used a chokehold and killed him. And ever since that day, he wasn't able to sleep. So we found him just driving around at night, and we befriended him. He was, again, a normal guy, but he had that tragic situation to live with for the rest of his life. And it was quite devastating to him. So it's not going to work out. That's my opinion. It doesn't mean you can't defend yourself. It doesn't mean you can't use reasonable force. It doesn't mean you can't do a lot of things to protect yourself and your property or your family, but it has to be proportional. When we're talking about minor items being stolen, assaulting someone viciously is not going to stand the mustard in court. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. But, if you report on that person or if you hold that person down, it's a little bit different. But you have to be very careful, and it's a very dangerous proposition to encourage that or let people think that's something that's appropriate.
Well, thanks, Mike. I wasn't encouraging vigilantism. I was just expressing what people are telling me, that they are getting angry, and the angrier they get, there will be those, unfortunately, that will try to take the law in their own hands. But there's no way I was trying to encourage vigilantism. So on that note, does anybody else have any questions of Mike?
Great. So let's go on to item number 2.1 Trail Regional Airport Operational Report. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Robert Baker to provide us a summary of the report and then open for questions. So Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Thank you. I remember the last meeting seemed to go very well when we went straight to the questions and found out what was important to Mayor and Council. Would it be all right if we started there? Perhaps there's questions about medical evacuations or Pacific Coastal Airlines and how many flights or passengers. Does that?
Sure. Okay. So does anyone have any questions for Robert? Colleen, go ahead, and then Robert Kashoni, Councillor Kashoni is second. So go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Hi, Robert. I noticed in your report that we have a new employee. I just wondered if, if we could get introduced, or if you could tell us who it was, or.
Yes, we had quite a few applicants for this position, and it's not an easy position to fill because it's part-time and only has 1 day a week guaranteed. So typically we're either looking for someone who's retired and isn't looking for a lot of hours. It's probably the best candidate, and that's basically what we were able to find. We found a gentleman retiring from the Air Force and moving to the area. He has experience in aviation, and as well as administrative experience working in the military. And certainly he's not someone to shy away from getting his hands dirty, operating equipment or cleaning our building. So we, at the 2 weeks of training we've provided him with so far, he seems to be an ideal candidate. So hopefully we can keep him entertained and give him enough hours that he enjoys his post-military career here in Trail.
Awesome.
Did that
That was
answer
good
the
to see.
question?
That's great.
Back, any questions of Robert?
Yeah, Councillor Santori. So Colleen, or Councillor Jones just asked a question, and Councillor Kashoni was second, and I'll turn the chair back over to you. So go ahead, Robert.
Okay, Robert Baker. I just noticed on the financials, so we're quite a bit down. We're about 200,000 in terms of lost revenue, expenses over revenue. And you see that sort of continuing for the next little while, or you think it's going to pick up? That's the first question. I'll let you do that one first.
So we anticipated less revenue this year.
Right.
Because we know COVID was going to happen. And it's never easy recovering our money from those that we've invoiced. Sometimes it takes more than a month to get the money for the check to arrive. And so the numbers that you would see on the report, the revenue is estimated, but it could be a bit higher. And what I am planning on is we're probably going to be about $20,000 short on our passenger fees this year, but we have quite a bit more aviation fuel that we've sold because the flights are full, so they can't carry as much fuel. So the revenue we're receiving from the additional aviation fuel sales is offsetting the reduction in passenger counts. So by year end, I would expect us to be bang on. And I don't expect there to be much, if any, additional tax subsidy required. I think the numbers will be 100% of our revenue realized and 100% of our expenses.
That's great to hear. But if we are short, we can still draw on the COVID money that we still have in the bank, because that's still applicable for 2021, correct?
I wouldn't want to misspeak. I'd have to defer to Reno on that question, but I
Okay.
know there is money sitting there and it will be allocated to the airport at year end.
Okay, thanks a lot, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.
Go
Chair
ahead.
Santori,
Yep.
I will comment that the COVID-related funding would be applicable in this case if it is required.
Thank you, Michelle. Lisa?
I had a couple questions, Robert. So with respect to fuel sales, how did we do for fuel sales during the fire season?
We did not bring in very much revenue during the fire season. And the reason is because the helicopters didn't visit our airport because the fires were not in the immediate vicinity. And so their default was most likely Castlegar. However, we are receiving higher than average fuel sales with the commercial air carrier.
Okay. And my next question was, are we at one flight a day? And then how full are the flights?
So right now we have a flight every day of the week, including 2 on Friday, 2 on Sunday. And then in December, you'll see that we'll start to go to 2 flights a day every day of the week. So that's good news. And your second question was, how full are they?
Mhm.
So when I look at January, February, I might see 10 passengers on an aircraft, inbound and outbound, so 20 total. Whereas right now we're seeing around 17, 18. So either full aircraft or almost full. So just between January and now, quite a bit of an increase.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions of Robert? Not here. Pardon?
Received. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to receive the report as circulated then?
So move.
Moved by Carol, seconded by Eleanor. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thanks very much, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, and now Michelle on our electronic council meetings.
Well, earlier in the meeting, we tried the hybrid meeting approach and we've had some technical issues. So we know that we do still have some work to do in order to continue utilizing the Zoom platform, but move towards in-person meetings. So with that, we've got some staff reporting prepared for you. Just wanted to let council know that the recent changes to legislation do require that we make a move to allowing in-person meetings again. So there was an interim period where, due to the COVID pandemic, council meetings could be held in the absence of the public. And at that time, we took steps to introduce the electronic meeting platform, and we've used Zoom with quite a bit of success because it provides a higher level of accessibility as well as transparency to council's decision-making processes. This time, though, we do need to open up our meeting space to allow for members of the public who may not have opportunity to participate or observe via Zoom connection to attend City Hall in person in the meeting and to observe and listen in to council's meetings. With that, it's also being suggested that we look at our council procedure bylaw because changes have been made to the legislation that will allow for electronic meetings to continue. So firstly, I think it's important that we understand the difference between electronic meetings versus electronic participation. So what an electronic meeting is where all members of council participate electronically, as we've been doing over this period through COVID. Electronic participation, though, is defined as a hybrid meeting where some members of council attend in person and other members attend by electronic means. So in our council procedure bylaw, under the old legislative regime, some members of council could participate electronically if they weren't able to attend in person. And when those changes were first made, it was back in the day when we would have you phone in via the phone system in the meeting room, and you would listen in and participate via the audio. So with the changes in technology, we now have the opportunity where we can video conference, and we want to maintain that. So the council procedure bylaw at this time, it indicates that the presiding member of the council, so whether it be the mayor at a regular council meeting, or in this case, Chair Santori at the Governance and Operations Committee, are required to attend in person. And thinking back to the time when the the council procedure bylaw was changed to allow for electronic participation, it was thought important for the chair to be present at the meeting because they wouldn't have a good sense of, because there wasn't the video capabilities as to being able to maintain order in the meeting. So it was thought important that the chair be present with the majority of the council members, and anyone else who was unable to be present at the meeting could call in and dial in. Now with the advancements, it isn't felt as important for the chair to be present in person, although we would continue to encourage that. And particularly as we move towards having all of council back into the meeting room, what my suggestion would be is that we build in the flexibility in the council procedure bylaw, whereby all of you could attend electronically if you chose to, or if you needed to, but for the most part, where in-person attendance can be achieved and we can get through all of the technical issues, then we'll move towards having all of council back into the meeting space and allowing then also the public to attend. Because we still have room capacity issues in council chambers, it was thought that we would take the first step to have just the presiding members and the staff necessary in the council chambers so that a greater number of public could be present. So once we work out some of these technical issues that we thought we had taken care of, that would be our first step. And then when we have some success with that, we would then open up the opportunity for more of council to return to in-person. And we do anticipate that there will be some coming changes to the room restrictions and limitations. So at a certain point, we will be able to have all of you back in the council meeting room. So at this point, it's being brought forward to you just to provide some input. We do want to, we recommend the continuation of the Zoom, use of the Zoom platform so that there is that public accessibility and that we can stream while the meeting is going on, and then also upload the video recordings to our YouTube platform. But it really is a decision of council. We do think that would be the best method is if we can implement a hybrid approach, utilizing Zoom as we're doing now, but meeting in person and having the public in attendance.
Move as recommended.
I'll second.
Any questions of Michelle?
I'm just speaking to it. I think it's the best way in case you're sick or whatever it happens to be, and you don't know how long this is going to go on. So I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else? Not hearing any. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Andy,
Yep.
I have some new business I wanted to raise if possible.
Okay, go for it, Robert.
Well, I just wanted to get some clarity on the business of the investigative report. This is my understanding of what happened, and maybe Michelle, you can follow along to the way I saw it. First of all, we had a motion that we were going to, a motion came forward to release the entire report. It was defeated. Then we had another motion, I believe, to release the findings and recommendations, and that passed. And then I think we had a third motion. I was trying to find them all because I think there's 3 or 4. Then I think we had another motion of the one I made to solve the problem of the redaction, to release a redacted copy. Is that, so Michelle, maybe you can just clarify. Is that my understanding?
There were 2 motions passed. The first was defeated. The second motion that you made reference to, where council had agreed to release 2 sections of the report, was passed. Subsequently, a motion was made to have an FOI specialist provide some oversight to the process. And as a result of that review, as the head of FOI for the city, the responsibility for the release of that report rests with me. And because there are third parties impacted, we had to handle the report and its release as a Freedom of Information request. And with that, the third parties were provided with opportunity to provide input to me as the head of FOI for the city. And I consider that input and then determine whether or not to release the report. So although there was a motion of council passed for the release, your motion cannot circumvent the Freedom of Information and protection of privacy requirements. And so with that, a decision has been made and communicated out to the two members of the media who had sought those portions of the report, and that those will not be released as part of the FOI response.
So just to follow up there, I don't understand when we say third party, what do we really mean by that? I mean, I read your report, but I just don't understand what that means.
It was an incident investigation into an employee complaint.
Right.
So the city employee would be a third party, and the counselor who the complaint was advanced against would be the other third party.
Oh, just two people then. Okay.
Correct.
So I guess I'm really concerned about this. You know, I don't even know what to make of it. I mean, I read through the report a number of times. I've gone through, there's sections in there where I cannot see any reference to the other third party. As far as I'm concerned, I consented to the release of all of the findings. I consented to the release of all of the recommendations. I don't have any problem at all releasing it. So I don't know if my wishes were taken into account, because nothing is going to be released. I was looking at it today. I went through and counted, in actual fact, sections of the report, and there's some in the recommendations, and I encourage all of council to take a look at the recommendations. There's sections in that recommendations that don't have, at least in my opinion, have no impact at all on me, and if they did, I don't care, and they have no impact on the other third party. So I just can't understand how not one piece of that findings and recommendations can possibly be released. Maybe somebody else has an opinion on this, so I'm going to be quiet for now. Thank you.
Did you want to respond? Go ahead, Carol.
Thank you, Councillor Santori. Yes, Miss McIsaac, why did we not go this route when we released the original report, a few months ago on Robert? That was released to the media. We put that out as a media release.
Why did you, I don't quite understand your
Okay, so
question, Councilor Dobie. You had, as a council, you had agreed on the media release that would be issued with respect to the CAO's early departure.
Right, and then at the same time, there was the announcement about Robert being found in breach of council code of conduct. So if we released that, why weren't people concerned with that release and coming forward that they felt that they were a third party and they were being subjected? Why didn't that happen then? Why wasn't that considered at that time? We willingly released the information on the decision of the investigation under the council code of conduct, and we put that out to the public, but nobody came forward and said, I'm concerned, I'm the third party. So why would we have to do that now? I'm like Robert, I just don't understand this.
Do you want to
There's no
comment?
third parties mentioned in any of this at any time.
Pardon
I mean,
me, Councilor Dobie, I didn't hear that.
I say there's no third party, as far as I can see, has been mentioned at any time up until now. And, you know, I don't want to down any other counselor, but we're on council to make some really tough decisions. And if you can't live with those decisions and you're always worried about one repercussion upon yourself, then I don't know, maybe did you make the best decision in running for council? It's not easy being a counselor. It's not easy making these decisions. But it sounds to me like we're giving more protection to one counselor and to one employee than we are to the fact that Robert continues to be crucified out in the public, and we're not doing anything to try to correct that.
Chair Santori, if I could suggest that we move this discussion into a closed matter. It is dealing now with labor-related matters. Our CAO continues to be employed by the city. I can't answer these questions in an open meeting and still preserve the privacy that I need to.
It's understandable. So what we'll do is we'll finish this meeting and we can continue with this dialogue in the closed meeting in about 5 minutes. So are there any economic development matters at this time that, Colleen?
Well, I'm sorry, but I had a question on the report and the findings that we were talking about. Is there going to be some kind of report put out to the public so that they have an understanding of exactly what happened during this whole process?
Based on my review as the FOI head, no. So the release of the report was considered as a Freedom of Information request because I find with our small community and the fact that the CAO and the counselor who's was the subject of the complaint have been named, there's too much of a community awareness of the persons involved. And with that, with any release, I am unable to protect personal privacy. My decision can be appealed to the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner, and the 2 media respondents who had asked for the release of the report after it was motioned by council that the 2 sections would be released have been advised both that the report will not be released and of the recourse available to them if they wish to seek an appeal.
I guess I just have one small question. Is my understanding then that there was not one thing in all of the findings and in all of the recommendations that could be released that wouldn't compromise one of the 2 third parties? Because in my look at it, and you look at it too, Sandy, you look at it, Paul, you look at it, Lisa, there's sections in there that have nothing to do with either one of us. In fact, they have to do with, no, not one of the third party. So that'll be the question. Is there nothing at all in that could be released? And that's
That was
in
my
your opinion?
determination. Yes, that was my determination as the head of FOI for the city.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything under economic development matters?
That would be for the next meeting, Councillor Santori. So I think we'd be free to, or
Oh, sorry. Motion to adjourn the GOC.